Hey everyone, welcome back. In today's video, I'm walking you through how to create and work with 3D text in Photoshop. But here's the twist. As of the latest Photoshop releases, 3D is no longer natively supported. So I'll show you exactly what's changed, why Adobe made this move, and how you can still bring that cool 3D look to your designs, even in 2024 and beyond. By the end of this tutorial, you'll understand your options, how to access the classic 3D features, and where Adobe wants you to go next. So let's get straight into it. First, it's important to clarify, if you've just updated Photoshop to the newest version, especially if you're using Photoshop 2025 or newer, you'll notice that the 3D menu and tools have simply disappeared. This isn't a bug or a temporary glitch. Adobe has officially removed legacy 3D features from Photoshop. So if you're looking for the good old 3D workspace, like we used for extruded text or bevels, it's just not there anymore. Now, I know this can be a bit of a shock, especially if you've been relying on Photoshop for those eye-popping text effects in your social media posts, banners, or even client projects. You might be wondering why Adobe made such a drastic change. The reason comes down to technology. The traditional 3D engine in Photoshop was built using OpenGL, which honestly is a pretty old bit of tech. Modern Windows and Mac operating systems no longer support these APIs. In other words, the 3D code Photoshop relied on is kind of like trying to run VHS tapes on a streaming device. It just doesn't work smoothly anymore. Adobe is recoding a lot of Photoshop's graphics under the hood, switching to native operating system APIs, like DirectX for Windows or Metal for Mac. Redesigning the 3D system from scratch would be a massive project. And let's be real, there are now much better purpose-built 3D tools out there, including Adobe's own Substance 3D suite. So instead of rebuilding the 3D feature inside Photoshop, Adobe would rather you use their dedicated 3D apps for that workflow. If you're working on complex models, textures, or full scenes, that's probably the direction you'll eventually want to explore. But what if you just need 3D text? Maybe for a quick logo or a web banner, and all your past projects use Photoshop's classic 3D layers. You're not out of luck. The workaround is actually pretty doable. Here's what you'll need to do. Open your Creative Cloud app, go to the section where you can manage your installed apps, and look for other versions of Photoshop. You want to install Photoshop version 22.2. This is the February 2021 release, which still has all those traditional, easy-to-use 3D options. Don't worry, you can have more than one version of Photoshop installed at the same time, so your main app stays up to date for everything else. When you want to use 3D features, just fire up the older Photoshop, create your text effect, and you're good to go. If you're a beta tester or you like being on the cutting edge, here's another tidbit. Adobe has started to bring limited 3D object support back in their Photoshop beta, using the Adobe Substance 3D viewer. So, if you're curious to see where Adobe is headed, you might want to check out the beta and experiment with these new workflows. But for most of us, the easiest solution for now is to stick with Photoshop 22.2 for classic 3D. Alright, that's the lowdown. Creating 3D text in Photoshop these days requires a little workaround, but as you can see, it's definitely still possible, and you have some solid alternatives if you ever want to branch out into more advanced 3D work. If you found this tutorial helpful, go ahead and hit the like button. Let me know your thoughts or questions down below, especially if you're running into any issues with older versions or the beta. And don't forget to subscribe for more up-to-date Photoshop tutorials. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.